but they still love our melanin and studied our melanin from the 1600s all the way up to today. They have never stopped studying our melanin. Not once. Ladies and gentlemen, not once. But they studied it enough to know it is the thing to have. And this is why it's being robbed from our people in death. They know how important it really is.
Melanin's role is, in fact, even being rethought in medicine that, you know, is it really something that just absorbs sunlight, or does melanin have a role in the immune system in the body? And is it really more of an antimicrobial kind of defense against bacteria? Because melanin is found throughout all the animal and vegetable kingdom. And melanin is the very thing that you have in your hair and in your skin that gives you the color. Whether you're more red, whether you're more brown, whether you're tan, whether you're not, is because the melanin produced by your skin in the parts of the cell called melanocytes, or the pigment of your skin. And some people who have a condition called vitiligo, where their skin looks blotchy and they have white patches, they don't make this pigment. When you're exposed to ultraviolet radiation, you make more of it. Now, melanin is what gives chaga its dark color. That's what's so rich in this mushroom compared to the other mushrooms. And what they found in Russia, it protects genes and it actually repairs broken DNA. Isn't that wonderful? Something breaks down because you're exposed to chemicals or radiation. Think of the people of Japan right now in 2011 who are suffering from huge amounts of radiation. What could we do to help them repair their, prevent cancer developing? Well, you need a DNA repairer, and that's what melanin does. Just think what you can tell people who have families over there and so on. So this is a complex molecule. It's found in the brain. It's found in your adrenal glands. It's a powerful free radical scavenger. In other words, it helps the body prevent this oxidation, so it's an antioxidant. And I believe this is what makes chaga, among other things, one of the more special mushrooms that are out there. There are these polyphenolic, chromogenic, human-like complexes present in chaga. In other words, it's the dark stuff. The dark stuff, there are these polyphenolic, chromogenic, human-like complexes present in chaga. In other words, it's the dark stuff. The dark stuff, it's the dark stuff. The dark stuff, the black, brown stuff in chaga, what makes everything look so dark, which just, put it on your skin and it looks a little darker, but somehow it improves in things, as we'll talk about in a minute. That's what's in chaga. And they studied this, Babetskaya studied this in 2002, studied this melanin complex, and says it protects the genes in your body. I got really interested also in light. Now, the visible light in the electromagnetic spectrum is only a small part, and it's the colors from, the deep reds to the purples. But in this very narrow band, below that there is infrared or warmth, infrared light or warmth, microwaves that we use for communication nowadays with our cell phones and Wi-Fi and so on. Radio waves are even longer. And then up here are what's ionizing radiation that breaks down things like ultraviolet light, which is faster in frequency, X-rays and gamma rays like we get from atomic reactors and so forth. So here's another way of seeing it. Here's the electromagnetic spectrum. Visible light that your eyes respond to and your skin responds to is a narrow part of the spectrum, here. Now, when you look at absorption curves in the test tube of melanin, this is what we're talking about. You can see in the blue part of the spectrum over here, the short wavelengths, which is higher energy, melanin has a lot of absorption, and it falls off a little bit, but it's in the same region that our body absorbs also light in forms of hemoglobin when you oxygenate your blood. It's also in that same region. And when you deoxygenate your blood, when the cells take the oxygen up, then you get the bluer blood, which is venous blood. And it's in the same region where melanin absorbs it. Has a very broad absorption of energy. Okay, it absorbs light and warmth very, very effectively, and it modulates something in the body. And melanin, you can think of, is very analogous to the chlorophyll. That's the green stuff in plants. What makes the plants green? Chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is the same molecule as hemoglobin that's in your blood, except hemoglobin has iron in the center and chlorophyll has magnesium in the center. It's like liquid green blood, okay? Now, melanin has the same kind of ring structures and so on, and it makes very complex structures, and not all melanins are the same, as we'll talk about in a minute. In fact, there's somebody even studying that and wondering whether energy is directly absorbed from the melanin in your skin and transformed into energy in your body, okay? And they even think about could in the future, and they're developing this now, they're taking melanin and making batteries out of them that store energy from the sunlight directly. It might, in fact, become a future source of how we're going to generate energy. Now, let's get back with that little bit of physics background. Let's talk about melanin inside chaga and melanin inside the body. So it absorbs thousands of times more electromagnetic radiation actually than chlorophyll does. And chlorophyll is what we need to make proteins and sugars, especially sugars in the body. It exists in many other tissues, as I mentioned. It's actually a very important molecule in any woman who's having a baby because the fetus has all this melanin in it, as I'll show you. Okay, and it's thought to be, by some people, a master molecule that actually steers how the body communicates. For example, Frank Barr, a scientist, wrote a whole article, a whole issue of a journal called Medical Hypothesis, saying, you know, melanin is such a special molecule and it's found in the babies. It may have a major role in steering things in the body, in the whole regulatory system. Melanin's role in embryological organization, that's in the baby's organization, and tissue repair and tissue regeneration may be connected to the major role that it plays to balance the body, that's called homeostasis, in the autonomic, neuroendocrine, and immunological system. So in other words, melanin may play a much bigger role than just absorbing all this radiation. And when you get it into your body, it actually has a major effect on your immune system. Here's a picture of a baby at 35 days of pregnancy. And this is the eye of an embryo inside a mother. It's a very tiny little thing. Notice that the eye is pure melanin. That's an amazing picture, isn't it? To see all this melanin is inside, and when the embryo first forms, there is what's called the dark streak. It's all melanin. Okay, here's an example of a plant. It's an eggplant that has melanin in it and a genetically changed one that is no melanin in it. Notice the size of the two difference. I mean, this is an indirect indication that melanin, you know, directly can transduce energy in the vegetable kingdom. Now, the body is a living matrix, and you really want to get this because this is kind of part of the operating system of your body, you know, and I know that as we're talking about it, you really have to strain a little bit to stay with me, but I think it'll make some sense here. The body is actually a communication system where everything is connected to everything else, and it works through light. It works through light. It's called biophotons. And in this communication system, cells have connections to other cells called integrins, and electrons and light flows between cells. So it's like a supercomputer. Your body is like a supercomputer, and the skin is connected to every other part of the body. Kind of like a spider web, where everything, when you tug on one part of the spider web, it connects to everything else. And so these cells connect to the connective tissue, which the skin is part of, and it all works like semiconductors. Now, semiconductors, like computer chips, are made out of silicon. These are living semiconductors. Your body is made out of this complex hyper supercomputer that figures everything out And this is what energy medicine is all about. And when you put chemicals or drugs or lotions or pesticides or mercury from dental fillings that are leaking into your body, then this matrix gets upset. This matrix does not function. The energy doesn't communicate well. And this is where chaga is, I believe, very useful because it helps you detoxify from all of this. Now, here's another form of radiation that's now in our environment. It's called, this is from 1990 to 2007. This is the exponential rise of cell phone use in the United States. This is the increase in 2000 to 2010 of radiation in the environment. This is what we're living in. Here's an example. I just brought one of my little, this is a meter that measures the microwave in this room that you're sitting in. Okay, this is measuring that. You can actually hear, you know, the wireless. I can point it exactly where the most radiation is coming from. These are the communications. That is your Wi-Fi that's in this hotel. This is what people are living in nowadays. You know, in this, we don't know it because you don't feel it, you don't have a sense for it. You need a machine, or in this case, a microwave detector, you know, so you can see it. So I'm mentioning this is because we are changing as a species. And everybody says, well, they're not affecting anything. But we have shown studies, many scientific studies, that it causes DNA breakages, and the body generally repairs this DNA. But if you have chaga on your skin, I believe, or in your body, it helps repair these DNA breakages more. So just that reason alone, I think as prevention, it's a useful product to have. Does that make some sense to you? Yes. Yeah, because you really, you know, this is what we're living in, and we're kind of drowning in this microwave without even knowing it because we don't see it like light, or we don't hear it like sound. We don't have a sense for it. So melanin has a high antitoxic potential and helps enzymatic processes. It's a non-specific protective agent. It helps against mutation. It's capable of interacting with other chemicals called xenobiotics that cause oxidation, like heavy metals and other things. The body gets rid of them. It's one of the biggest things. And it has a photo and radioprotective activity. In fact, animals fed chaga, as I'll show you in a minute, live longer when you irradiate them with gamma rays, those really high-intensity rays that come from atomic bombs and from nuclear reactors. They live a lot longer when they take chaga. They've done studies in animals. Here, 305 days versus the control group died in 186 days. Now, I'm not suggesting any of us get exposed to gamma rays or whatever. Not healthy, you know. But we're living in a world that's a little abnormal. It's not what your grandparents lived in, and not even what your parents lived in.
Okay, y'all. There you go. I mean, even these scientists know how important your melanin really is. These average keyboard Nazis, they don't know anything. You know, they'll just sit there and tell you stupid mess like, what's the big deal about melanin? Because they're idiots, okay? But your more educated Caucasoid does know how important your melanin is. You know, this is why they have spent a lifetime trying to achieve what you get naturally.
Started rolling. What is melanin and what is carbon? Tell us about those two minerals, or whatever they are.
Melanin is not a mineral.
Okay.
Melanin is a word that was used to describe a certain biological function But that particular identification or category or thing, melanin, is a European identification of what they think activates those neurons in our body that makes us black. But when you break down our body, our biological structure, into what we would have to put it in, which is chemistry, biochemistry, melanin has no place. It's not to be found. What is found in the body that is attributed to melanin is carbon. Carbon not only determines the quality of life in black folks, carbon determines the quality of life in every living plant that exists that is natural. If carbon is absent, there's no life. Melanin, what is it? I don't know.
Why are white people trying to get some? It's a Greek word, melanos.
Well, white folks talk about protein. What is protein? They say one of the 19 amino acids, the building blocks of life. But I know for a fact that that is not a true statement. Because protein, if it was the building block of life, what happened to the gorilla that lives 180 years without eating anything that's contained protein? Unless they're going to say that the plants contain protein too. They're always saying things, and because we have no laboratories
Thank you, Chief.
to investigate those things, then we have to swallow it hook, line, and sinker. Miss Frances Welsing mentioned melanin. And I asked her, what is this thing? And I know she could not adequately answer the question because she was trained by someone European. So when you are trained by a European and told these things, you have to regurgitate these things. But no, they are completely in error. But how many brothers and sisters in America or anywhere in the world qualifies to offer a challenge when we have nothing to test that which we are given for validity? Straining that iron with carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. The CHO chain is the chain of life. Carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen.
Hey, it's Professor Dave. Let's talk about carbon.
He knows a lot about the science stuff. Professor Dave explains.
You may have heard that carbon is the element of life, but what does that mean? What determines whether an atom is of carbon in the first place? An atom consists of positively charged protons, neutrons, which have no charge, and negatively charged electrons. An element is defined by the number of protons in the nucleus. 1 proton is hydrogen, 2 is helium, 3 lithium, 4 beryllium, 5 boron, and 6 is carbon. The number of neutrons and electrons can change, but by definition, any atom with 6 protons is a carbon atom. How do they form? Hydrogen, the simplest and most abundant of all elements, accumulates into clumps due to gravity, which become stars. The tremendous inward pressure triggers nuclear fusion, which is when protons and neutrons smash together and fuse. Many elements, including carbon and larger ones like iron, are made in stars. Many elements, including carbon and larger ones like iron, are made in stars. Many elements, including carbon and larger ones like iron, are made in stars. Much larger ones need the immense energy of a supernova explosion or particle accelerators here on Earth. Much larger ones need the immense energy of a supernova explosion or particle accelerators here on Earth. Or particle accelerators here on Earth. Or particle accelerators here on Earth. So what's so special about carbon? Let's look at the electrons. Carbon atoms have 6. The first 2 are in the inner shell, and the other 4 are the so-called valence electrons. So it's the ability of carbon to bond in a wide variety of shapes with so many elements, including itself, that makes it so special. Also, carbon-carbon bonds are strong enough to be stable, but not so strong that they can't break and rearrange, which makes them excellent building blocks. When by itself, carbon has many allotropes, or ways an element can be arranged. There's the graphite in your pencil, which consists of slippery sheets of carbon that rub off easily. There's diamond, the hardest substance known, and we can even make interesting structures like nanotubes and fullerenes. That's just carbon by itself. When combined with hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and a few other elements, it makes all the diverse structures in your body, including carbohydrates, proteins, and DNA. We can take nature a step further and synthesize novel materials with an array of purposes. Putting carbons in the empty spots of an iron lattice makes it stronger. We call this steel, which is used in most of the large structures we know today. Teflon, a carbon-fluorine polymer, is a non-stick substance that's highly resistant to chemical degradation. And carbon-based synthetic drugs like inhibitors that can silence a faulty enzyme hold the prospect of curing so many diseases. That's a lot of reasons to love carbon. It really is the element of life. See you next time.
You're probably already familiar with some forms of carbon. For example, this graphite right over here. This is one form carbon takes, very important when you're writing with a pencil. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to see any writing if you didn't have the graphite scraping onto your paper. And your paper is also, it's not pure carbon, but it has a lot of carbon in it. This right over here is a raw diamond, another form that carbon can take under intense time, after a long period of time under intense pressure. But what you may or may not realize is that carbon is actually essential for life. In fact, life as we know it is carbon-based. So carbon-based life. When we look for signs of life, or at least life as we know it on other planets, we're looking for signs of carbon-based life. And there might be other forms, other elements that form the backbone of life, but carbon is the only one that we have been able to observe. Now, why is carbon so valuable for life? Why does it form the backbone of the molecules that make life possible? Well, it all comes down to where it sits in the periodic table and its atomic number and how it tends to bond with things. So this is why chemistry is important. So carbon we see over here has an atomic number of 6, which by definition means it has 6 protons. So if I were to draw its nucleus, it would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 protons. And the most common isotope of carbon on Earth is carbon-12, which also has 6 neutrons. So let me draw that in this nucleus. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 neutrons. And then neutral carbon is going to have 6 electrons. And so 2 of them are going to be in their innermost, in the first shell. So that's 2 of them right over there. These are the inner shell, I guess you could say, so that's the first 2 electrons. And then you have 4 remaining in its outermost shell. Now, I'm claiming to you that it's the backbone of life, or life as we know it. And it's even the backbone of life as you are, life in the form of you. We've already talked about you being a majority water, and that's why if you look at the average human being, is going to be roughly, it depends on how well hydrated you are and your stage of development, the average human being is going to be 65% oxygen by mass. So you're 2/3 oxygen, and that's because of all of the water. Water is H2O, and oxygen forms the bulk of the mass of the water molecule. But in second place comes carbon. Carbon is approximately 18% of your body's mass. And this is because if you think about the non-fluid part, the non-liquid part of your body, there's a lot of carbon going on there. This right over here is a DNA molecule, and so these little gray areas, this is all carbon. This right over here is hexokinase. I'm not going to go into the details about what it does, but hexokinase is a protein, hexokinase, and the teal color that you see there, that is all carbon. And the teal color that you see there, that is all carbon. And the teal color that you see there, that is all carbon. That's all carbon. This right over here is glucose. It's very sweet. It's an important way to regulate your body's energy. And the teal color, that is carbon. This is ATP, often considered to be the molecular currency of energy in your body. And all the teal there, this is carbon. This is why a lot of, especially the non-water part of your body, is carbon. So hopefully this gives you a better appreciation for carbon. It's not just useful for pencils and diamonds, but even if you're just looking at your hand, you're looking at a lot of carbon.
The first subject I want to touch is black goo, and first time I heard of black goo was from you, and I remember last time we had no time to get into everything. So I watched some of your shows that are available out there, so I heard about the black goo, and I know that a lot of people have no idea, never heard a term, never heard of such thing. What is black goo? What is it?
The easiest way to grab it is like understanding how life is created on a planet. 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 This is, the research is coming from the lab. We did all this in the lab just by moving water enriched with carbon dioxide, enriched with carbon dioxide, enriched with carbon dioxide, seeing what happens inside the water. This is kind of transmutation research. Once you have the results in the lab, it is possible to understand what happens inside the earth. So now we go all the way, how life is created. You have subduction from the oceans, where water sediments, water-rich sediments go into the lower areas of the planet, and this water rises up again. It's lighter than stone, so it's pressed up, and it's enriched with carbon dioxide from all the biological things that are subducted as well. So we have uprising carbon dioxide enriched water. And this goes through the stone in a under high pressure, high temperature, and with a lot of vortical motions. And you can imagine like the stone is opening, closing, you know, for all these veins of water rising up. So you have like Venturi valves. So you have compression, and then it releases, which is creating cavitation fields. This is exactly the setup we use in the lab for transmutation. Okay. And in the lab, what we can observe in the lab actually is that the water and the carbon dioxide is getting into very high molecular order with vortical flows with high speed. You have kind of charge separation in the water. And under these conditions, the molecules start to exchange atoms. So what you get is fulvic acid as the first basic brick of life, in a way. And this fulvic acid in this vortical motion is uniting to hydrocarbon chains. Okay. And this is all anorganic in a way. Now, what we discovered in the lab, which is not so easy to understand, that transmutation doesn't run in the table of elements, in the lines, but it runs in the rows. We transmute hydrogen to carbon to silica to gold. This is how it goes from the light elements to the heavy elements. Okay. It's just a scientific finding, you know. It's known since the 20s. Victor Schauberger was the first one to discover these lines of transmutation, to describe them, and by using his patterns and geometries and flow patterns, it's easy to reproduce the findings. So we have to deal with this. So there's no way around it. This is how it happens.
So black goo is a matter found on Earth? Yes. The earliest, we can find remains of all the process that kind of is leading to the creation of black goo. So if you look, for example, at mumio is found on the surface of stone in caves in the mountains. And this is kind of the early stage. It is rich in fulvic acids and has already some carbon chains. So this is kind of halfway to black goo. If you run these transmutation lines to the precious metals, then you create something that has all the physical properties to be able to carry a certain form of magnetism. Okay. So you create a liquid that has precious, monoatomic precious metals embedded in a carbon environment. And this is the basic structure of life. So it's alive. It's a matter that is alive.
In a way, yes. The monoatomic elements exchange light. They are photon attractors. So and these photon patterns are partly in an annihilated state. This goes into higher dimensional physics. So we have a 4D realm with this black goo inside, and we have everything that is needed to process consciousness. You know, this bidirectional light is consciousness. And it comes out of the anorganic realm at that point. So what basically is created by upwhirling water is the physical matter with the ability to carry consciousness. It is still a baby in a way, with a zero experience. Then we have the black smokers in the ocean, where this liquid comes up and goes into the oceans. Geologists say that this is where life is created, in the biosphere. So this goes into solution in the water, and you have all the precious, the monoatomic gold soluted in seawater. You have the basic carbon pieces to build up life, and this is where life is created.
Sperm capacitation is collectively the process of sperm undergoing various physiological changes after being ejaculated from the testicles. This process occurs in the female reproductive tract for a selective period of time via uterine muscle contraction. The sperm cell undergoes various molecular changes to render it competent for oocyte fertilization. The ratio of cholesterol is a major determinant of capacitation. Removal of cholesterol leads to destabilizing of the sperm head plasma membrane. This increases the potential for fusion with the acrosomal membrane. This is removed in the female tract and is also a major step in capacitation. Spermatozoa undergo plasma membrane hyperpolarization. This causes an influx of bicarbonate and increases in CAMP metabolism. The increased bicarbonate stimulate adenyl cyclase, which in turn increases CAMP production. CAMP is a signaling molecule which acts on calcium. Calcium has a major role inside the sperm. There are 5 different channels expressed. The CAMP signaling pathway is stimulated by angiotensin II, A2. A2 receptor is AT1 and is found on the sperm head and all along the flagellum. A2 binds to AT1, causing an increased production in CAMP. The change in intracellular CAMP causes activation of pKa. The increase in CAMP production can lead to spontaneous acrosome reaction. The acrosome is a cap-like membrane that covers the anterior portion of the sperm head. The cap keeps sealed within itself the required enzymes used for penetration of the ovum. The cap keeps sealed within itself the required enzymes used for penetration of the ovum. The cap keeps sealed within itself the required enzymes used for penetration of the ovum. Hyperactivation is often considered as high-amplitude asymmetrical bending of the sperm flagella, resulting in a nonlinear trajectory including circular trajectories. Hyperactivated sperm have a greater propulsion. The hyperactive state gives sperm penetrative strength for crossing the cumulus matrix.
Go ahead and think for a moment about your very favorite food. What is it? Pizza, macaroni and cheese, chicken salad, sushi? Well, we all have different food preferences, but food is a source of large molecules that are needed for life called biomolecules. There are 4 major biomolecules that make up all of life, and this will be the focus of this video. So let's introduce the 4 biomolecules now and talk a little bit about their functions. We'll start with carbohydrates. Next one up is a diverse group known as lipids. Next, proteins. The last biomolecule is known as a nucleic acid. We just powered through introducing the 4 biomolecules. One last very important part to mention is the structure of these biomolecules. Understanding the structure can help with predicting their properties and easily being able to identify them. One thing I like to tell students to do is to write the 4 biomolecules in the same order that we went through: carbs, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Then remember this mnemonic device that goes with these 4 biomolecules. Cho, cho, chon, chomp. Instead of chomp at the end with an M, it's chomp at the end with an N. The C stands for carbon, the H stands for hydrogen, the O for oxygen. So carbs, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids all have that cho in there.